What exactly is the Dark World? What are the Shadow Crystals? And what is Sans hiding? Welcome to the Deltarune Coin Theory. A lot of you guys really seem to have liked my previous theories, so as long as everyone keeps supporting them, I'll keep making them. Deltarune Coin Theory is more or less a theory on its own, so having prior knowledge of theories I made so far isn't really required. Although, it would be nice if you liked and subscribe. Coin Theory is the theory that the Light World and the Dark World are set inside of the same world, simply split in two from light and dark. What I want everyone to do right now is to take any coin you see. The coin you hold has exactly two sides on it. The side you're looking at right now, and then if you flipped it, you'll be looking at a new side. So essentially, coin theory states that the light world and the dark world are two halves of the same coin, with the light world being on one side and the dark world being on the other. The dark world doesn't take place below the light world as some may think, especially because it looks like Chris and Susie are going down whenever they enter the dark world. This sequence is actually an optical illusion to make you think that Susie and Chris are going downward, when in reality, this is just their transformation sequence. The dark world isn't below the light world, and it isn't in another world either. It is actually the same world as the light world, but reflected. Coin theory altogether sounds very complicated, but once I show you the evidence, I think you'll begin to understand. Let's talk about the Shadow Crystals. Shadow Crystals are highly representative of what the dark world actually is. In fact, Toby pretty much gave us a glimpse as to what the dark world could be through them. When you click on a Shadow Crystal in the dark world, the information given is actually different from that of the light world. In the light world, shadow crystals simply turn to just glass, which typically when you think about something reflecting back at you, you'll often think of a mirror, which is literally glass. In the light world, the glass information changes based on how many people are in your party or not. If Susie is with you at the time and you check the glass, it'll say that you thought you saw Susie glaring at you through the glass. Since Susie is behind you at all times, this means that the glass is reflecting, and almost like a mirror, you can see Susie behind you despite not actually looking at her. If Susie isn't in your party and you check the glass, it says that for a moment you thought you saw through your hand. This sounds pretty confusing, but the reason this is actually happening is because your hand is on the other side of the glass holding it, and the glass is reflecting back at you. To put it into perspective, let's say you're holding an object with both hands, like a giant box. If you look down at the box, you wouldn't be able to see your hands because the box is in the way. It's the same thing here with the glass, except it's almost like a piece of a mirror. The reason you thought you saw through your hand was because you were actually looking at a reflection back at yourself. Now that we've established that in the light world, the glass, aka the shadow crystals, are reflective, let's move on to the dark world side of things. In the dark world, if you check the shadow crystals, the information will be different depending on which chapter you're in. In chapter 2, if you check the shadow crystal, it'll give you dialogue back to you saying that for a brief moment you thought you saw the computer lab. In chapter 1, if you check it, it'll say that for a brief moment you thought you saw toys strewn on the floor. We all know that this is where both of these dark worlds take place. And based on the information from the glass in the light world, we can come to a conclusion that shadow crystals are reflective, which means that when you look through them, no matter what, it's always reflecting stuff back at you. This means that the light world and the dark world may actually be more closely linked together than we thought, almost as if they're two halves of the same coin. The dark world is completely centered around darkness, while the light world is completely centered around light. The light world is light because it's on the surface. It isn't underground. We know this because we know that the war between humans and monsters never actually happened in this game, so the monsters were never sealed underground, which means that the sun is always pumping out light to this world, which then results in the light world. However, in the light world things are different. What if I told you the dark world is actually just a shadow of the light world? An entire world created just from shadow. The first word from shadow literally comes from the word shadow crystals, which ultimately makes us come up with this conclusion. Shadows form when an object obstructs rays of light, so hypothetically, if there isn't light in this dark world, that would mean that the entire dark world is just covered in shadow. Once again, I want you to take a look at the coin you had earlier and face it flat in the air. On one side of the coin is taking light in. On the other side of the coin, it's keeping the light out and creating a shadow, aka one of the sides is the light world and the other is the dark world, but ultimately it takes place on the same coin, or world in this case. With that, this begs the question: what are the Darkners, and what are the Lightners' role in this story? And most importantly, what the heck does all this have to do with Sans? Well, let's get into it. And my next theory, that is. Thanks for watching, and check out my previous Undertale theories in this massive playlist.